To help us further understand the local impact of the Big Bend border wall proposal, we also wanted to bring in our panel. We first have Christina Hernandez with the Big Bend Conservation Alliance. She is a Round Rock resident from Presidio whose family has lived in West Texas for over 1,000 years. That's amazing. We also have Yolanda Alvarado with the group No Big Bend Wall. She is a fifth-generation cattle rancher whose family has been on their property in the Big Bend area since 1919. And finally, we have Dr. Steve Black, who's been an archaeologist for more than 50 years. He's a research professor at Texas State University with extensive experience in the region's archaeology. I know this has been a busy and a tricky time for all of you, so thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
So let's start out. We posed the same question at the start of the show, but after this announcement from CBP, what do you think is motivating this latest reaction? Let's start with you.
I think it's a way to get the momentum to die down against the border wall, but I also think it leaves out the voices of individuals who own private property along the Rio Grande.
And Yolanda, that's like your family. You guys have property along the Rio Grande.
Right. Even if they say there's no wall in Big Bend National Park, it doesn't mean that we're leaving out other infrastructure that they're putting in. And also, we still have a wall up north. And whatever happens up north is going to trickle down to the south.
Indeed. And what about you, Dr. Steve?
Well, the area that I know the best is the Lower Pecos Canyon lands at the eastern end of the wall, and that part is still scheduled to go through as far as I understand it.
And you two specifically, you are like boots on the ground living in Big Bend. What are you hearing, if anything, on what's to happen next?
Right now, they're scheduling a man camp to be put in Culberson County, and they're already hauling water to the border and heavy machinery and already working on the wall as we speak. So right now, we're expecting to see construction continue. Nothing has changed.
If this wall goes up, what is at risk of being lost? Let's start with you, Dr. Steve.
Well, the whole region has been home to humans for at least 500 generations of people, going back at least 13,000 years and probably several thousand years earlier than that. And there's a tremendous record of people's lives that is what we call archaeological sites and historic sites. And a lot of that record stands to be erased or severely impacted by the proposed wall.
There is so much history in this land. It's kind of hard to wrap your brain around going back 14,000 years or so. And I know your family, how rare and special it is that you can trace your family's ancestry in this area for 1,000 years. So Dr. Steve, to elaborate a bit further, can you talk about the archaeological significance of some of these sites where the wall would be going up and what we would truly lose if they were to go up?
One good example is the region's extremely fantastic rock art, or painted pictographs on the cave and rock shelter walls. And these date back at least 6,000 years ago, and they were painted on and off for 5,000 years. And they're often regarded as some of the most ancient books that we have that tell us about the prehistory. It's not a book per se, but they're narrative scenes that convey sacred stories. And these, there's many of these that are going to be damaged by the wall or impacted by the wall. About 80 of them are going to be on the wrong side of the wall, the south of the wall, and therefore they're not going to be accessible to researchers. And others of them lie directly along the wall line.
So even if they're not destroyed or lost to history totally, we may lose access to the continuation of the study of them. And to note, this area is also the oldest continuously cultivated land in the U.S. So how would the border wall impact local farming? We're not just talking about losing access again to the Rio Grande for irrigation, but also potentially losing access to some of the most historically significant farmland in the country. Can you two talk about that?
I think when I think about Presidio specifically, where my family is from, and along going up towards Redford, that land has been in families for generations. And so that is also a form of generational wealth. And people are still using that land to provide for their families.
And how might that impact, I know you're into ranching, but how might that impact families like yourself?
Oh, well, we're full-time ranchers, and so this would completely disrupt the entire operation. Not to mention the environmental costs that would weigh on us, as including flooding, losing grazing land and everything else. So we potentially might lose our entire business. And we're not the only people who are experiencing this. There are many ranchers and farmers along the border whose lives are at risk because of this wall.
Wow. So it's livelihoods at stake, the economy at stake, but also let's talk more about wildlife. I'm glad you brought this up. How would a border wall impact wildlife migration and habitat in the region? Because animals, they don't know which side of the wall they're on. They're going to smell water and they might get confused.
Well, we're in the desert, and right now we have black bear who've been coming back, Mexican black bear coming back from Mexico into the greater Big Bend area. And so they would be losing their migration patterns. We're also in the desert, so a loss of water means that a lot of the animals who are in the area would be able to smell the water and die of thirst along a border wall infrastructure.
And then this might also affect birds, correct?
Yeah, they can fly over the wall, but what we're talking about is loss of habitat. And so habitat that they rely on in those migration patterns that would no longer be available. Also nesting along the way, that habitat would be lost, and birds would not be able to find areas of where they're normally having their young, and also food in the area as well.
This also could impact hunting, right, for the whole state of Texas. That's something that I had not heard before. Maybe Yolanda, can you elaborate on that?
Well, again, with the migratory patterns of deer, aoudad, and as Christina mentioned, we are a desert. So when our natural reservoirs dry up, which would take approximately 4 months in my area alone, we are a desert and we have droughts. And once those dry up and these animals are not able to source from the other side of the river, they will migrate out of the area, which could possibly end hunting in that area as well. So they would most likely migrate up north.
And you bring up the discussion of water. And you know the old saying, in the West, whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting over. A lot of water, manpower, and just plain power will be required to build this wall. Some counties in the area are already at a disaster water level now. So what concerns do each of y'all have about the strain that construction could place on the local water and infrastructure resources?
In that area, water is life, and so we already have a very low water table, including when we're planting for green spaces, we're looking for plants that we know will do well in the desert and can acclimate to a low water table. And so when you bring in this added population, we don't have an infrastructure, we don't have water wells, we don't have water capacity to be able to sustain this increase in population. And that's very concerning because what happens to local residents?
Indeed. And some of these towns, they don't even have a grocery store. And now they're going to be expected to host an influx of people that you don't know. You know, and these are very small, isolated towns. So if you don't even have a grocery store to support your existing residents, how are you going to support an influx of hundreds of new people?
Yep. Not to mention, they're also already in Jeff Davis County pumping out hundreds of thousands of gallons of water from wells and hauling it just for the build alone, to be used for cement mixing or also dust settling while they take their heavy machinery down there. So not only is we're going to have more people occupying the land, but also using it for construction. And that's definitely going to bring down our water table.
And Dr. Steve, you know, the water in this area has been crucial for those 14,000 years we talked about for people on both sides. Can you talk about the historical significance that this source of water has played in this area?
Well, people were tethered to water. And so we're up and down the corridor. People's lived near, you know, they spent most of their time near bodies of water, near the river, near the canyons, near the springs that are in the canyons. And these are the areas that are going to be impacted by the construction of this road. And it's going to wreak tremendous damage to what is a fantastic archaeological record, going back, as you said, 14,000 years. And so much of it is going to be threatened by this construction project, however they actually do it.
And another layer to this is we have heard reports of some landowners in this area feeling pressured or confused, for that matter, into signing legal documents to grant entry to their property or let construction begin before the government can take possession through eminent domain. In your experience, Do you feel like landowners are being taken advantage of in some cases?
Oh, 100%. And I've spoke to my neighbors, even my family alone have been pressured. They're issuing ROECs, which is a right of entry for construction, before a survey can be done, and threatening landowners. They have 5 days to sign, or they will pretty much take it, is basically the summary of these contracts. And it's leaving many people confused. But one thing I would like to mention is most of these contracts are riddled with mistakes, since they're only using a county-issued map from the appraisal district. So many of the contracts do not have the correct name owners or parcel ID numbers, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are pressuring landowners to sign.
In something unique on your land, it's not just this ranching operation that's been in your family for more than 100 years. There's also a cemetery on your property that could be affected. Can you talk about that?
So right now we got the U.S. Army Engineers, Corps of Engineers, issued a map of where the wall will be, and it is directly on the road, a half a mile away from the river, leaving our family home on one side, and then our family cemetery and our water well on the other side. And this is why I'm saying it would completely disrupt our operation. And it's not just us, but it's our neighbors as well, and many people along the border. We know landowners who will have the wall 7 steps from their back porch. And these people are being pressured in. And the issue with the ROECs is once you sign that contract, they can move in tomorrow and start construction. And this is how they are fast tracking this process and taking advantage of landowners.
You're all just normal people living your lives. None of you chose to be activists, so to speak. Can you talk about the psychological, emotional toll of this now national fight has been like for each of you?
Yeah, I've stated before, it's hard for us to sleep and eat. We have just this overhead of anxiety because we don't know what's going to happen and we don't know what's coming. And it's especially difficult since DHS and CPB have not been transparent about any plans. The only thing we had was the CPB map on their website, and they erased that as well. So we don't know what's looming over our heads. We have no way of figuring it out as well. And like you said, hasn't been any public comment on what is happening. So psychologically, what it's doing to our surrounding communities is it's just leaving us on edge. I believe the Big Bend sector has $56.5 million in revenue and tourism alone. So it's not just ranchers or landowners, but there's businesses that will suffer because of this. People are not going to go river rafting with concertina wire. So we have a lot more to lose in the region, and it spans far beyond just the border.
Indeed, it does. And not much of Texas is public land like this. So to lose this would be absolutely devastating, even just a fraction losing some of this. And, I want each of you to explain, what do you hope Texans, or maybe anyone, can understand about what is happening right now, Big Bend? I want each of you to answer, but let's start with you, Dr. Steve.
Well, one of the biggest challenges is so little is known about what they're going to do. They produce these generic statements and maps without telling any of us what they're actually going to do. So understanding the impact, the short-term and long-term impact of it is hard for us to gauge, and it's really not being able to carry out research in the area would be devastating for my field as well. And there's so much of the history that is yet to be told that lies buried in the ground, and it's going to be, by all accounts, going to be impacted severely by what's been planned.
And Yolanda and Christina.
Well, for us, it's not just fighting for our land, it's fighting for our livelihoods. And what we're also fighting for is just our right to live. Right now, the government put on the state of emergency on a border where we go to sleep peacefully at night. There's no emergency there for us. The only emergency is this wall coming in and disrupting our entire lives. And so right now, it's just really brought to light just how people don't understand what happens in that region and how easily the federal government can just come in, put the state of emergency and take land. And it really comes to show if they're going to do this here, who's to say they're not going to do a state of emergency here in Austin to take over land and steal people's livelihoods?
Nothing happens in a vacuum. And then finally, Christina.
I think I'd want people to imagine living in fear in their own homes every day, waiting for somebody to come and knock on your door and tell you that you can't be there anymore, to tell your loved ones, your grandmother, your aunts, that they need to leave because that land doesn't belong to them anymore, and to live in this perpetual limbo because nobody will give you information on what's going to happen next. I think that is something that all of us want to impart on people in Central Texas and beyond, that this is something that is impacting us every single day, every minute of our lives, and to put themselves in our shoes. What would they do if their homes and their families were at stake?
And it can be hard in the news cycle to hear, you hear of something, and even though Big Bend is part of Texas, it's easy to disassociate, it's far away, but this is something that should impact every Texan. And to hear your stories is so convicting, especially with the roots that you've had for generations, with the amount of study and the time you spent down there. It's truly a complex issue that affects every Texan, and I think should affect every American, and it is far from over. Christina Hernandez, Yolanda Alvarado, and Dr. Steve Black, thank you so much for sharing your insights on Big Bend with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave us a comment below to let us know your thoughts on this video. And don't forget, you can watch full episodes of Austin Insight for free in the PBS app.